One person said no. So 16 people said yes, one person said no. Of course, you can continue to vote on this poll throughout the day and through all programming, and we'll give you the final results come tomorrow morning, which will be Friday, because the weekend begins tonight, people, at the second after midnight, because it's Thursday. So we are zooming towards the weekend already, and of course, theater is on this weekend, just in case you didn't know. Ladies' Room is on Saturday and Sunday at Napa in Port of Spain, National Academy for the Performing Arts. People in the Port of Spain area and in Western Trinidad, you will have to go to Napa to get the tickets. We don't have any other outlets. And of course, people are in the East. You have Jubilee Rawa in Tunapuna, next door to Hussein's Roti Shop. People in the Trin-City area, you can get your tickets at Fens of Marabella in Piarco Plaza. People in Arima, you can get it at Electronics in Arima, at Electronics in Arima, and of course, people in Chagonas, you can get it at Bargains Drugstore, Price Plaza in Chagonas. Well, Chagonas and Central, which of course is the most urban area in the country. But of course, we are so looking forward to it. We're having rehearsals, late night rehearsals now, but we're having so much fun. It is so good to be back on stage. So theater begins this weekend, after a 2-year hiatus, courtesy that thing called COVID-19. And so we're finally back on stage. It resumes in full force this weekend, Saturday at 8:30 and Sunday at 6:30. So get your tickets as quickly as possible at Napa. I know lots of groups are coming, so because people are buying tickets in groups. So a lot of big lines are coming apparently to the play this weekend. So looking forward to it. It is going to be so much fun. I tell
I'm
you,
surprised we don't have laws in place here to keep trucks in the left lane except when overtaking.
They may have. So, and of course, it's the best actresses in the
No,
country.
there is, it's just not policed.
So,
In Trinidad and Tobago, there's a law that trucks are restricted to the left lane. Are you sure? What does the law state? What's the law? Road traffic safety
Well,
act.
it goes for both cars and trucks that you have to stay left unless to overtake. I think trucks with certain amount of axles cannot be on the right lane. That I don't know the law to T, but okay, fine. I'll look for it.
But that's not a law specifically for trucks, though. Yes, the general law is keep left except when overtaking, but I'm talking about a law, as in the US, where trucks cannot, there's a truck lane, let me put it that way. And trucks can't go in any other lane, except that lane is blocked.
I'm trying to get someone so we could find out for sure.
Well, Brent Batson might be able to help you. Not sure about if he's still the person who speaks on behalf of the police traffic. Quite possibly, so he's done it for years. Anyway, 7:24. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Hope you're having a good morning. It's SEA this morning. So don't stress out the young ones. Just kiss them and tell them do their best. And when they come out, do ask them how they did. To the point where you send them into a frenzy. I know parents are eager to see how the exam was and stuff, but sometimes they transfer their nervous energy onto the child before the exam, and the child goes in there with a state of paranoia and anxiety that inhibits their actual performance. So just say, I know you worked hard, I love you, and go in and do your best. When you come out, we're going to take you for pizza or something.
Oh yeah, pizza.
You know you have an unhealthy obsession with food, right? You know that, right?
You know me, my favorite food is, one of them at least, is pizza.
Dave, everything is your favorite food.
Pizza. All right.
Is there something you're missing that you're filling the void with food? Going to psychology mode now. You're muted, but Ragoobarsingh.
yeah, what's the joke?
I'm trying to figure out if there's something in his life that's missing that he's compensating for with food, you know?
Who's that, Steve?
I just mentioned the kids After the exam, the parents could take them for pizza. Steve eyes to roll back in his head again. And he went into the demon pose, pizza. He said that's one of my favorite foods. I guess what everything is your favorite food, though, Steve.
What he says is one of his favorite foods?
Pizza.
Pizza?
Everything is Steve's favorite food.
Mm.
He talked about fried chicken earlier with a glee. He talked about doubles with a glee. He talked about pizza with a glee. It's like, he's so obsessed. He talked about roti with pepper with a glee. It's like, what is not Italian? Oh my God, Steve goes crazy. He just loves food. And there's nothing wrong with that, but in moderation. And clearly he is not able to moderate. I mean,
lasagna.
you see,
I wanted to mention that, there was an accident in Cocorite sometime in February, I think it was. Let me check to see when it was, actually. Actually, it wasn't on the evening of February 12th. A woman was struck by a vehicle while crossing the Audrey Jeffers Highway in Cocorite.
I remember that.
I remember that accident. But apparently, the vehicle belonged to the Archdiocese of the Roman Catholic Church, and the woman was not immediately identified. While someone said she was homeless and lived in the area, another person had posted that the woman was mentally challenged, etc., etc. The woman who died was Kevlin Wellington. And of course, I'm saying her name because sometimes when tragic situations like that happen, we dismiss it and move on.
Victim.
We move on and we say, oh, good, somebody
and nobody acknowledges
homeless
life
or whatever. Whatever narrative that comes first is what it is. But she was not homeless. And of course, the Archdiocese issued a statement offering condolences to the family and praying for the repose of the soul of the woman who died in the accident. So it happened by the Cocorite Fish Market, and the driver attempted to evade the woman, but he came into contact with her, the report stated. The woman was thrown about 15 feet and died on the scene. But getting to who it was, the deceased woman was identified by her relatives as Kevlin Wellington. And this week, her family reached out to the newspaper to defend Wellington's honor, saying she was a beloved niece and sister. And while waiting on word from the police and the Archdiocese, they wanted to tell the nation about her. They said Wellington was a religious woman who identified Arabic and wanted a better life for herself and her little brother, who was placed in a children's home after their mother died several years ago. The newspaper had spoken with her aunt, Deirdre Mitchell, on Tuesday, and Mitchell said she was saddened by the social media posts and wanted citizens to know that the woman who died on that roadway last month was the kindest person she knew. My niece was identified. She was not homeless and she was not mentally challenged. None of those things were true. It was devastating to read those things on social media. But
newspapers published that.
Yeah.
But newspapers published that.
Because they went with what was on social what was on social media.
Yeah, which is so sad.
Yeah. So Mitchell said her niece had moved out of the family's home into an apartment at Old Arima Road 2 weeks before her death. She had gone to that area to spend time with a girlfriend, and she was making her way back home when she was hit by a vehicle. Wellington was 29. She was not married and had no children, but Wellington worked to provide for her younger brother, who was disabled. That was her only partial dependence. She would take things to him. Their mother died when she was very young, and she feels responsible for her brother, her aunt said. Wellington also loved cats and would often rescue stray animals and take them home. She was a practicing Muslim and was very smart. She started Arabic classes and was learning about her newfound faith. It was very sad that her life ended this way. Mitchell said she had contacted the Archdiocese and was told someone would return a call regarding the incident, and I'm in contact with the police and was told that the investigations are ongoing.
Well, I'm glad somebody acknowledged and put the record straight regarding her life.
So Kevlin Wellington, yeah, but I mean, condolences to her family again. And
it begs a larger question in this country that we always talk about the focus on the condition of the roads and road safety. And we rightly focus on a lot of the driver issues in Trinidad and Tobago. But I always remember my trip to Germany and the kind of focus they place on doing the analysis on the roads and using the data on the number of accidents in specific areas to make changes to the road, the infrastructure, to decrease that. That Cocorite stretch has been an area where there have been so many accidents, fatal accidents, people trying to cross, cars hitting each other. There's a stupidly built bridge and interchange in South Trinidad that has been the subject of so many accidents. And I remember in Germany, one of the people who were taking us around telling us that if there's an accident, there's a thorough investigation, and the authorities see there are a number of accidents there and make infrastructural changes to make sure that it's not a situation where the drivers are not at fault alone. Maybe it's a difficult negotiation for a turn. Maybe the angle of the road is too steep. Maybe the lighting is poor. Maybe the skid parts on the road are not developed enough, or the traction on the road is not developed enough. On the Audubon Highway, which is one of the most sophisticated highways in the world, the gradient never exceeds, I think it's 13 or 15 degrees, to put the car in more of a position to skid. The road has sensors all the way through so that when cars are coming, the sensors turn on and off lights meters before the car hits the area to, one, conserve electricity, but two, make sure the road is always lit. And they pay meticulous attention to road repairs and road maintenance because they understand the significant impact it has on road safety in addition to drivers being vigilant. We let potholes roll, curb line, sometimes the pavement, the same level as the road. They pave the road so much. The road is uneven. We have poor construction. I always mention that interchange in San Fernando, that is one of the most stupidly designed pieces of road engineering I've ever seen in my life. Where you come off straight into a major road at an incline and a steep, and a small exit into the road, and no one ever fixed it. The bridge that people, a twin died and several people died in San Fernando because the bridge is so badly constructed in terms of the road going into the bridge that people crash into the bridge often. No reconstruction of it. So I don't know how much attention is being placed to this.
Yeah, and you can also see it on our highways too, because there is, I can't think of any highway, maybe the Audrey Jeffers, maybe parts of it. Well, you'll have parts of highways. Let me put it this way: you'll have parts of the major highways in Trinidad and Tobago that are flat and undisturbed, very easy to drive on, but not for the full length. At some point, you're going to meet a bump. At some point, you're going to meet an uneven part of the road. And your car, you could feel your car going, zoop, zoop, especially that South Highway.
Mm-hmm.
That South Highway is a mess.
Yeah.
And in fact, as a driver on the South Highway, you generally know the areas.
You know the areas that you gotta be more careful at.
Yeah.
But no one fixes the actual issue.
No.
That puts you more at risk. No one ever says, well, everybody experiences this. There's a part when you're coming up from south and you actually drop down by Guardian's substation there on the left side. There's a hump up a bridge that's badly made, and the car goes almost airborne for a couple seconds.
Yep.
And drops back on the road. Am I wrong?
Nope, you're not.
But no one's seeking to fix it.
Nope.
Recording in progress.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I do have Mr. Brett Batson online. Of course. Good morning to you, Brent.
Good morning to everyone.
How are you? Long time.
Yeah. Good. Still doing what we have to do.
Exactly. And of course, Brent is the coordinator of road safety for the TTPS. So I'll let you know that.
Morning, Brent.
Morning,
I have Paul Richards. I think you heard about him. And
Yes,
I have Richard Ragoobarsingh. I think you also probably might know his name.
Somewhat, yes.
Yeah. He kind of walked less, but it's all
We're
right.
talking road safety this morning, the tragic death of the woman on the highway. And we wanted to know, first of all, what the law was regarding heavy vehicles on the major roads especially.
All right. Well, when you say heavy as in what specific?
The big trucks, the
as
big
in the
trucks,
speed limit.
the big trucks. The speed limit,
Yeah.
whether they're confined to a particular lane. I know the general law is keep left when overtaking, but do we have a law in Trinidad and Tobago that's akin to what we see in North America and some parts of Europe where trucks have a specific lane assigned to them and they can't go in other lanes?
No, no. So just to clarify, so again, the speed limit for any commercial vehicle where the MGW exceeds 3,200 kilograms, that's when they have a 65-kilometer speed limit. There is no law specifically saying they are generally governed by the same principle that all slower traffic should keep in the leftmost lanes on the highway. Yeah? So it's interesting you mentioned that because we are in discussion right now with the Ministry of Works and Transport Traffic Management Branch to put up more signage to kind of remind our traffic, whether it's trucks or even some drivers, that they really need to keep in that center or left lane if they're not engaged in any sort of overtaking maneuver, or if they've completed that overtaking maneuver. Sometimes I always remind people to be conscious, though, for example, when approaching so if you're northbound on the Uriah Butler Highway, and let's say you're getting close to Grand Bazaar, remember, a lot of the traffic has to switch over to the right lane if they're continuing north or if they plan to head west. So, yes, they might look like they're driving slow, and then after Carney, the bridge, it drops to 60 kilometers an hour, closer to Grand Bazaar, and they will be occupying that right lane. So persons also have to be aware when traffic is moving across into the right turn lanes, for example, of the highway, whether it be Tackerick or wherever, that the traffic obviously has to slow down to occupy that right lane to do those right turns. So therefore, that right traffic suddenly becomes slow in that right lane, and that's what sometimes creates those kind of diverse speeds rather than unified speeds at all the time. I mean, the ultimate goal for any highway network is to not have any right turn lanes off the highway. I believe that's one of the goals with the removal of the traffic lights and the overpasses and so forth.
So heavy T trucks are not supposed to drive more than 65 km an hour?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so once that MGW. Now, a heavy T comes into play where the MGW is more than 2950, right? So, however, as you know, you can pick up like Rangers and trying to the Mazdas. The MGW is 3200, so it actually is a Class 4 vehicle. However, they do have a 100-kilometer speed limit because the MGW does not exceed the 3200. So you're right. So those bigger trucks are supposed to be doing 65.
But any police car on any highway in Trinidad and Tobago must know that any average truck in Trinidad and Tobago is not going at 65 km an hour.
Well,
And this is just my experience as a driver. They are all many times moving faster, sometimes even than the cars.
Yeah. So
And I haven't. Well, I mean, I haven't seen police pulling them aside for going over 65 km.
I saw one last week.
But I mean, I'm not constantly on the road, so I can't see that it's not happening. But
yeah, well, I see the ticket generation through the ticket management system. I know for a fact that they do what they call commercial vehicle enforcement, specific for speed for large trucks. Interestingly, that with that fatal yesterday on the southbound lane on the highway, again right in the Golconda Papuri area, another thing that light vehicles do have to understand that these larger vehicles also need more space to stop. So, for example, if I'm not saying this happened, but I'm just looking at a scenario. If you are approaching an exit that you want to take, and you're in that middle lane, and you're going to cut across that truck and think that he can stop on a dime like a normal car, that unfortunately it can be a fatal mistake in front of these larger vehicles. They also tend to have larger blind spots. Remember, for example, containerized trucks, they don't have any rear view mirrors. All they have is just side view mirrors. So they have large blind spots to the rear and to the front. So persons when driving around these large, you have to give them more room. And you have to be conscious that they also have a longer stopping distance.
does the TTPS have any reminder sessions or send any reminder notices to like places like the TTMA, the American Chamber of Commerce, the Supermarkets Association, the obvious places where you're going to have a lot of these huge trucks? Do they send reminder notices or liaise with those major organizations that oversee all of these companies who would have these trucks, reminding them to remind their truck drivers to please obey the speed limit, reminding them it's 65 kilometers an hour and that they should keep left and follow the rules? Does that sort of sensitization take place as part of the TTPS with these major agencies where a lot of these trucks come from?
Yeah, well, what we tend to do is more outreach. We actually try to go to the companies to speak to the truck drivers because we like to go beyond. It's such a broad range of topics sometimes when you're dealing with commercial vehicle enforcement, ranging from excess projections to wide loads, changes to load regards to the increase in fines for excessive or overloading of vehicles, and more importantly, dangers. So for example, when trucks can't stop because the braking distance is designed for 30,000 kilograms, but you've loaded 40 from the quarry, it's not going to stop in time. So we do have a joint approach for that. So we tend to do direct visits and presentations. With regards to social media, I think it's a good idea. We could probably do more of that so it reaches a more diverse crowd quickly.
Do you do data collection to the point of analysis of areas on roadways throughout the country that have a higher incidence of accidents?
Yeah, of course. That's what drives our whole visibility and enforcement regimen. Everything is data driven.
What are the areas that because we talk about Cocoa Rate, there's a part on the bridge, that interchange in Sanford, which I call a stupid interchange. The parts in
interchange?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then on the highways itself, Charlieville, what they call a hotspot for crash locations. That's on the Uriah Butler area, vicinity Nagar. High up by Carney, just before the Bridge Sanctuary. On the east-west corridor.
What are the deficiencies in those areas, if any at all? Or is it that they are longer stretches the drivers just speed more in those areas?
It tends to be, again, you see, it's speed by itself. I always tell people, if you're driving, let's just say you're driving 120. Okay, you are breaking the speed limit. In a straight line, that's fine. There's less likelihood probably you'll just crash in that straight line. It's when you add these other elements, as in a sudden lanes change, or you're making this assumption it's you alone on the road and nothing's going to happen. You're assuming that pedestrian is not going to run across that underneath the walkover, so that the excessive speed is going to lead to loss of control. In a lot of these situations, it tends to be an element of recklessness, where persons are changing lanes, without properly assessing how much space they have to complete that maneuver. And these sudden lane changes or sudden steer in direction quickly leads to loss of control on the highways, and unfortunately has a fatal outcome. Also, a lot of people tend to lose control and hit fixed rigid objects such as light poles and stuff at the side of the highway, or they go through some of the guardrail areas or unprotected areas. So it's really a combination of factors on that point. But at the same time, very preventable. If I always say 1,000 cars passed there and nobody ran off except you. What did you do wrong? So it really is dynamic with regards to the risk. But we are seeing a positive change in general in the country, but we're still seeing these very, very unfortunate incidents. As I mentioned, we had a highway patrol officer that died in a head-on crash up in the area of Antigua Road, and that's a 50-kilometer road. So it's disappointing when we see these high-risk maneuvers still taking place, and the outcome is still the same with regards to loss of life.
How much does construction of the road and or the lack of maintenance contribute to a lot of these accidents that we see? Because even on that South Highway, Paul and I were just talking about it, you have all sorts of dips as you're driving, as a driver. And of course, you would have been on that road, so you know what I'm talking about.
Even the Betham.
Yeah, that all of a sudden you'll feel little dips in the road So the road is not completely flat and smooth and consistent throughout. You get bumps and little valleys and stuff where the car bumps up and down. I mean, how much is all of that contributing to it? Because these are places where people are driving at high speeds.
But I know you consider that 100 kilometers is definitely high speed compared to our previous highway speed limit of 80. With regards to for example, we know that one incident where there's on a northbound, there's a slight dip or elevated area by the bridge where a person, but we suspect the driver was going actually around 120 and hit that elevated area and actually went airborne. And then, of course, when the vehicle came back into contact with the road, the driver did lose steering control and she crashed and died. There was an eyewitness, and that's how we got the information on what exactly happened firsthand. So I think it could be with regards to some engineering aspects. I always make mention, though, because a lot of you guys are well-traveled. You go on the I-95 from Miami all the way up to Fort Lauderdale, and you will also see some deficiencies in some road engineering, even in the great U.S., you know. Drivers need, though, to also adapt to the road conditions. This is, don't get me wrong, potholes, all these things do contribute to risk. And definitely road maintenance is a key part in what we call the road safety triangle. But it's an area outside the police remit, but we do work closely. Once we get these identified things of high risk to us, especially hazards on the road, we communicate it immediately to Ministry of Works and Transport.
There's a general reduction, thank God, in the road fatality rate in Trinidad over the past couple of years. I know Arrive Alive and yourself and the TT Police have been doing a lot of advocacy and public awareness. What are the main transgressions that you still see that we still need to work on?
Well, the top five, even if we look at the data from behaviors through the fixed penalty notice system, where most of the offenses take place, top five are still, unfortunately, seatbelt. And this is why on the fatal scenes, when we see drivers or passengers thrown from the vehicle, you can see why that still pops up, Unfortunately, people still take those chances and not wear their seatbelt when it's your form of primary protection in any form of crash. The second violation is speeding. And a lot of persons don't seem to understand the ramifications as it links back to your loss of your license due to points. If you're driving on the highway at 130, let's say 132 kilometers an hour, and you're caught speeding, that ticket is $3,000 and 6 points. And then next week we stop you and you're not wearing your seatbelt, that's 4 points. And you've already reached your maximum threshold for disqualification to lose your license. So all these are forms of deterrence to coerce drivers to just obeying these safety rules. And its number one goal, of course, is to save lives and keep families together. The other transgressions we tend to see, of course, would be the line of mobile phones, which still is prevalent, unfortunately. And we're still getting a lot of breach of traffic signs. There's obviously a lack of traffic sign awareness. Sometimes persons not paying attention to the times. They still think, well, because there was COVID, that's some reason a no entry sign, 6 to 9 doesn't apply. But everybody should be aware now, come on. The traffic is full pre-pandemic levels, so what we call normal traffic, and all these traffic signs now apply. We've had the mayor mention wrecking. Wrecking has already started back in San Fernando. It never really stopped. And Port of Spain is recommencing shortly. And again, because the congestion has become intolerable to accommodate the volume of traffic back into the city. And if everybody just did the right thing.
I don't buy that excuse that wrecking somehow makes congestion go away in Port of Spain. Come on, Brent.
No, again, I'm not saying it makes it
wrecking
go
is
away.
punitive to citizens. They are punitive, and it's something that should be stopped. If somebody is badly parked, that's when a wrecker should come out. And for anybody else, put tickets on the windscreen.
Right. So that's what's coming next, though. So the main target, like I said, those parking 9 meters from a corner, fire hydrants, all these areas where, again, or even parking in areas where they shouldn't be parking along that time because it's high peak hours. good example, as you guys would know, is Arapita Avenue. When you're heading east in the morning, where there's no parking permitted 6 to 9 because of the high volume of traffic moving into Port of Spain. So when persons park there, especially in those left lanes, it really causes a lot of congestion. I don't think anybody could dispute the level of inconvenience it causes. That being the case, the situation you're talking about is on the cards with regards to reintroducing the stickers on the windscreen, what they call affixed tickets for park vehicles, where the registered owner will now have to deal with the fine. And then I actually saw some of the features of the new parking meters that also are on the cards to be implemented. So
Oh,
it's
give me a
definitely
break.
coming. I
Sorry
just
for
telling you what I saw.
Get-
That's my
those
job.
parking meters have been
Communicate.
discussed for the last 20, 30 years.
No, but this is I think I'm telling you right now. It's pretty close. It's pretty close to implementation.
Pretty close could be anything in Trinidad and Tobago. Brent, are you worried? Is the TTPS worried about DUIs increasing, given the fact that a lot of the restrictions are going to be raised on the 4th of April? Safe zones are no longer going to be a thing. Bars can now operate at a particular capacity, and people who were waiting this respite are now going to go crazy, particularly with the long Easter weekend coming up.
Oh, definitely, and we have we've been preparing. Commissioner Jacob, our Deputy Commissioner Operations, Ms. Sachin. Before that, we had Ms. Christopher. She was actively getting ready through equipment readiness training in anticipation of the reopening, and it's a risk that yes, it was reduced with regards to the COVID period, especially with the bars being closed and so forth. We're already seeing a lot of nightclubs where the volume of people attending is really, really big. And we will be out there doing what we have to do as well. We're just hoping people don't forget the responsibility attached to using a motor vehicle. And that 35 micrograms is strict law, and that's designed to keep people safe on the road. So we're hoping people do the right thing. Sorry, is?
Breathalyzers are back out? Going to be back out?
It never stopped. I mean, probably we didn't publish it as much because what was very disturbing, even during the lockdown, when we were still having to deal with high breathalyzer readings. I mean, legal limit is 35 micrograms, as you all know. But when the bars were closed, we were stopping drivers with 115 micrograms. I mean, it's crazy. We don't know if they're drinking home or if they have it in the trunk. But the drinking and driving never really stopped.
Because some bars never absolutely closed, Brent, and you know that. You must know that.
So I understand.
And if you don't know that, Brent, then I need to be a police officer.
Feel free to. Look forward to it. Yeah. I think you'd make an awesome officer.
I don't think so, too. I disagree with that.
But I just want to send that message since you brought it up and you're quite right. Please remind all drivers, the risk is not worth it. Over the past week and just over a week, we've lost 5 persons to road traffic accidents, which is too much. It's actually caused us to go 3 more fatals higher than the year before, and when we're on a continuous downward trend. So we will have to do what we have to do to try and,
Brent, do you make recommendations to the Ministry of Works, given the data that you analyze, on places that need to be changed or fixed infrastructurally?
Yes, a good example was the where we work with them where there's lack of signage or lack of lines where accidents are happening frequently. Sometimes you have to even implement a speed hump in a community where people are being reckless and disregarding even school zones. So yes, we have a close collaborative team.
Yeah, well, that's great to know because I think that kind of synergy is important, and especially coming back to the issue of wreckers, which of course irritates a lot of the citizenry and a lot of drivers across Trinidad and Tobago, and because there is a weakness in proper signage indicating not only parking hours but indicating where parking is allowed and where it's not allowed. Sometimes sometimes you have people getting tickets and they think, but there is no sign here, and you hear those stories. You know what I'm talking
Of
about,
course.
and
Of course.
obviously it's a gap in terms of the Ministry of Works Traffic Division or Road Sign Division, whatever they call themselves, and the respective authority, whether it be the city council in the Port of Spain area, in having these things properly delineated, so that citizens are not in doubt. Because I know, and I'm sure you know too, that when people are going on the Arpita Avenue, sometimes people take snapshots of their cars to show that they are the correct distance from the corner, because there's no sign that says park beyond this sign or anything like that. So everybody is kind of guessing, and they're thinking I am beyond the required limit, and they take a snapshot.
Yeah,
Citizens shouldn't have to go through all of this uncertainty. They shouldn't.
No, exactly. Clear signage allows increased compliance because that communication element is high. I also want to look at the other side, and I'll use this opportunity to remind drivers: when you pull up to a sign that says no parking, and your passenger jumps out to just go to the ATM, and the motorcyclist pulls up, and you're telling the motorcyclist, my friend just went out there to use the ATM. At this point, whether or not your vehicle is in drive or park or the engine is on or off, you've committed the traffic violation of breach of a parking sign. So you've caused the road traffic act. Did the driver cause the vehicle to stand, all right, and remain standing? He did. So you can try and argue as much as you want, but at that point, you have committed that traffic violation of no parking.
So parking is not stopping, or stopping is parking.
Well,
once your engine is running and you stopped, you basically parked.
Yeah, that's it. You parked. Yeah, you parked. And worse yet, sometimes they do it right underneath the parking sign, because they misinterpret the fact that the engine is running or they're in drive, that they're not really parking. They're just waiting.
Do people underestimate the distraction that hands-free telephone use causes?
I think so. Again, the main concern with, of course, distracted driving, it affects the brain. So regards to the thinking function or the cognitive function for assessing risk and space and judgment. But you also have the distraction sometimes of mechanical of persons holding the phone. Worse yet, if they're actually dialing. And I'm glad you mentioned it. So it's another opportunity to remind drivers that once you hold it, even if you just have the speaker on because you didn't have the actual Bluetooth or wireless headset feature, you commit the offense by just having it in your hand. We've had people argue, trying to tell in the magistrate court, and even online virtually, that I wasn't talking on it. I just finished a call and I was now putting it down when the officer saw me with it in my hand. Okay, and the offense is driving while holding or using. So let's see.
Well, that's the offense, driving while holding. So holding the phone is an offense also while you're driving.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
But you know what I see a lot of people doing as well? Facebook Lives while they drive.
Yeah, but not only while they drive, but when their body's on the road. And drivers they're trying to direct traffic, and they're trying to hold up their phone and record the body on the side of the road.
Which is an offense.
I see that. We've seen that.
Brent, as we close, I have a question that could put you in a lot of trouble. Who are the worst drivers, man or woman?
Ooh.
Right, so I also want to remind drivers.
Brent, you bypass that question fast, boy.
That, as you mentioned, the most ticketed offense, that drivers under the Road Traffic Act, if your passenger is not wearing their seatbelt, you will pay the ticket. The law says no driver shall cause any occupant of the front seat to have the vehicle driven without a person in the front seat wearing a seatbelt. You, the driver, commit that offense. We're getting a lot of people.
I'm glad you mentioned, because it triggered a question in my mind. Brent, is it an offense to drive while smoking marijuana?
Yes.
To drive while smoking marijuana?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you can have. That's a good question, because you can have 35 micrograms on you, while smoking in the car, you see, the car would be in a public place. That's the problem. You'd actually be
in
smoking
a public
marijuana in
place.
the public on
The
the
law
public
allows you
road.
to smoke in the
Therefore,
confines of
commit the offense.
a
Yeah.
private residence or something. Okay, right.
Yeah.
So I think I want to declare that
You
because
commit the
people were
offense.
confused about that, and people were asking me. I said, "Well, I really can't remember what the law specifically
I
says."
think
So
under the law, you're not allowed to, you're not on, just like driving under the influence, meaning alcohol. I don't think you can drive under any drug. You're not allowed to. I think
That's right.
I think that's part of the law.
That's there. That old section of law is there. But the quantification, how we'd have to, for that offense, we would have to prove that somehow that you're unable to control the vehicle to prosecute under that section.
Well, I know
also-
abroad, I know police forces abroad have a test. I can't remember what's the exact name, where they test
There's a
for
drug,
drug.
there is a drugalizer. There's a
Yeah.
drugalizer. I know that one of the things they plan to bring is that other instrument first.
Well,
But
the
it's
law
still in
says in the
draft
code now
stage.
because the law tells you can have X amount of grams of marijuana, but you're
On
not
your
supposed
person,
to.
yeah.
But the law doesn't provide for selling marijuana in Trinidad and Tobago, so you get it in space. It's drop out the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all.
You're
Well,
allowed to
well,
plant.
it's
You're allowed to
technically-
plant. You're allowed to plant.
But yeah,
Yeah.
well,
You are allowed to plant. Don't
up
go
to
down
X-
that road.
Up X amount of trees.
4 per person.
4 per person.
If you
Yeah,
have
but I
5
also-
people inside your house, could have 20 if they're all adults.
Well, I was
And you
impressed
get,
with
and you get you get your daily fix by that, right?
You could get more than your daily fix.
Okay.
What's that, Brent?
Well, it was also interesting the responsibility that when we stop persons and we do a search and they have it on them, they also have their scales to show us that it's within the micrograms of
Oh,
it.
boy.
So,
Because they understand the TTPS, Brent.
Let me tell you something. You all are saying that when I was walking a couple of weeks ago, I think I mentioned this. I saw some fellas by a corner pull out a mini scale and weigh marijuana. I went into shock. A mini scale that holds the palm of your hand and weigh it.
that is again.
Yeah.
I mean, okay then. New.
But Brent, let me ask Paul to repeat his question, which you sidetracked. Paul, go ahead.
Brent Batson. Who are the worst drivers, men or women?
Brent, you want me to answer that for you?
No,
According
I'm
to the
asking
insurance
Brent Richard.
industry- According
Alright,
to the
so
insurance
I-
industry, men
asking
are the worst drivers.
Brent.
Men
Brent.
take more risks.
We work with data, and what the data says, for example, for last year, 85% of all road traffic deaths were male.
So men are worst drivers and the data supports it.
And
Men are more
I can tell you
risk.
what road traffic.
Yeah, more risky drivers.
And
Women are
Brent,
more risk averse.
Brent, before we go, and he started the interview, we asked about the law and staying left except to overtake. I thought, and I've been told, it was stay left except to overtake. If it's not, it's $1,000 fine if you decide to cruise on the right lane.
No, it is. All right. So there's an offense of obstructing traffic. All right. So if you're doing 40 in the right lane, we can ticket you for obstruction of traffic because you're obstructing the free flow of the traffic at that point. A lot of people say, well, no, that could only happen if you're parked. But the law doesn't say that. Okay.
Right,
okay.
someone just asked a question related to that, Brent. Sorry to interrupt. What about businesses who block parking in Port of Spain?
Right. So I want to be clear on this. On Arapita Avenue, there was a certain business that started to cone off parking areas for their customers. We removed all their cones and asked them to come collected by the Traffic and Highway Patrol branch. You do not own Arapita Avenue is a public road. All these businesses have to understand that is a public road. There are people that say, I can understand if you're doing it to prevent a person from blocking your gate. All right, that gate access, that's different, but that's just one cone. It can be 12 cones in order for you to facilitate that challenge. So the answer is no, and we even let the proprietor know that if they do it again, they will be charged under the Highways Act for obstructing a roadway, and which will cause us to arrest them without warrant.
But Brent, I have seen, and in fact, not too far from this office, there's a building that has the official police notice, no parking, that they
Right.
take out every morning and rest on the road, and then they take it back into the business. or whatever it is, and put it back in the evening.
Now, some businesses do apply to the Commissioner of Police for these legitimately, and they would have a letter. The police would have to investigate and just confirm that they have that permission, because there are certain rules with regards to the placement of those signs, no parking signs, by order of the Commissioner of Police on the road. So it will be interesting to see if you could always WhatsApp me or take a picture and send it so that we could
Verify.
check
Could
it and check
verify.
on it. Yeah?
Yeah, they block it off. They put pieces of wood. I'm sure if you go Charlotte Street now, you'll see sweet drink cases blocking off with a piece of wood in between.
But Charlotte Street special, Steve. You can't come Charlotte
Yeah,
Street.
Charlotte Street's a special street.
That's special.
And I just want to remind the listeners as well that, the 1st of June is when that leeway for tin compliance takes place. So please, visit the tin shops, have your windows and your windscreens in order with regards to the legal limits, because, like I said, it comes into full effect 1st of June. That's coming up.
Ragoobarsingh with that,
Yeah,
Have a good day, Brent.
I've seen some tint in front windshields that I don't know how they see out of that. You can't see inside at all.
But that could be another conversation coming closer.
Yeah, we'll do that for sure.
Yes, sir.
Brent, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. We spurred the moment for calling you. Really appreciate the time you spent with us.
No problem. Everybody be safe.
All right, have a great day and be safe.
Recording
Thank you, Brent.
stopped.
Thank you, Brent. All right, gentlemen. One of the best drivers in TNT is sitting opposite me. So let's get into our major news brief. All powered by Champlain Auto Services.
This is your news bulletin from Power 102 Digital.
Over 19,000 children are sitting the secondary entrance assessment today to move on to the next phase